Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Dan Ashton. I'm the Mayor of Penticton. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight. This should be a very informative night for all of us. Just before we start the program, I'd just like to introduce, there are some members of council here. There's Helena Conance, Andrew Jacobite, Wes Hopkins, Gary Litkey, and John Vasilaki. If they're not all in the audience right now, they will be. On it, I'm thanking council for coming tonight, and I also like to recognize the numerous city employees of the city of Penticton are here. These are hardworking individuals that really make a difference in this community for all of us. So I just want to thank the city workers for being. It gives me great pleasure tonight to introduce our moderator, Steve King, and many of us know Steve. He's the voice of Iron Man. He's the voice of the community in many functions. Steve has a Bachelor of Science in Health, a Bachelor of Science degree in Health and Human Services, and is a registered clinical counselor. He was the CBC's color commentator for the sport of the triathlon. He is also the race announcer for many sporting events, including Ironman Canada, and he has an avid interest in a healthy balance and holism part of life. Steve has worked at Pathways Addiction Resource Center in Penticton since 1989 and was a local Justice of the Peace for 5 years. He has authored a book on the energy psychology entitled Rapid Recovery, Accelerated Information Processing and Healing, and co-edited the book Running in the Zone. Again, Steve is a phenomenal individual here in our community. I'd like to welcome Steve, and please let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. As you heard, my name is Steve King. I am a resident here in Penticton, and tonight I have volunteered to facilitate this discussion of the AMR electrical meters and the BC Hydro Smart Meter program. I want to just mention a few housekeeping rules that I would like to outline before we get underway. Firstly, we really appreciate the fact that we can and are able to use here the Cleveland Theatre facility. It's a wonderful facility to be able to engage in this forum this evening. I would ask that everyone turn off or mute all of the technologies, your cell phones or any other technologies, please. What we would ask at this time as well, if there's anyone who is going to be asking a question, making a statement, or even giving an opinion, we do have reserved seats in these front couple of rows. So if you would come and take one of those seats, please, so that I am able to recognize that there are people who are going to be standing forth to make some form of presentation. There is one microphone available to people who are going to be posing questions or making a statement or giving an opinion. That microphone is right in the center there. So we would like you, once you address your comments, please do so that the city representatives and the Kevin Proto presenters can hear your statements, questions and opinions clearly. And I would ask also that you please state your name and address so I'm aware of who it is and what order we're going in. But also, if the question is directed specifically at someone, the names, as you can see, are on the tables there, so please let us know who you're directing that at. We are recording all comments, and as you can see, we do have some media present here with us. If you have more than one question, what we would ask you to do, please, is present that one question, then take a seat back in the front 2 rows and come up after the final person. So you could have 3 or 4, and you will get to ask them all, but we want everyone to have that opportunity as well. Now, when it comes to the agenda, we are going to introduce initially the city presenters, then the Kevin Proto presenters. Then there's going to be a city presentation on the AMR electrical meters, and then Kevin Proto and his team will present on the RF energy in the air. And then we are going to open things up to yourselves to pose questions or make statements. I will call in order, as I see you sitting down, to come forward and ask you to, again, give me your name. We will ask that you limit your stuff to about 5 minutes because there could be a lot of people. We are hoping to go maybe up to 2 hours. We hope it doesn't extend to 3, but we are asking both parties here to take anywhere from 15 minutes to 1 hour to make their presentations. So I trust as members of a democratic society that we will allow all citizens the opportunity to express themselves in a civilized manner without interruption. So let us please all be courteous and respectful, and I'm sure this will prove to be a very informative evening. So at this time, I'd like to introduce you to the city presenters. They are, to my left, Mitch Morosiak, the Director of Operations for the city, Mr. Eric Livolzi, the Operations Manager for Electric Utility for the city, Mr. Tim Wolf, the Director of Marketing for Itron, Mr. Mike Burns, the Senior Product Manager for Itron. And on my right, we also see that we have Brian Thiessen, we have Curtis Bennett, and Mr. Kevin Proter. And we're going to start things off by calling upon the city presenters.
Good evening, everyone. Just give you a little bit of a history of the AMR program here in Penticton. What you're looking at on the screen right now is an electromechanical meter. This is the typical meter that you would find on a house until recently. It's 75-year-old technology, and essentially this is just a small electric motor that drives a mechanical counter, accuracy of plus or minus 2%. And around 2000, 2001, we were informed by the manufacturers who were supplying these meters that they would no longer be supporting this platform. They were moving to digital meters. So it was necessary at that point to find an alternative. So all the leading manufacturers were moving to a digital platform. So that's what we started looking at. We investigated AMI, which is Advanced Metering Infrastructure, basically what's known as the smart meters, and also AMR, the automated meter reading. The AMR was considered to be most cost-effective for a small distribution utility that we have. Introduced reduced reading time and better accuracy, less need for rereads. This is the AMR meter that we have been installing since about 2003 now. These are a solid state meter, no moving parts, very accurate, plus or minus 0.5%. They do use a radio transmitter to transmit the reading that is on the meter. That's the only data that they transmit. There's just the one radio on the ears. There is no communication into the premises. They transmit the consumption register every 30 seconds, and the duration of that transmission is about 150 milliseconds. What that translates to is about a 0.5% duty cycle over 24 hours. This is a AMR commercial meter. Essentially, it has the same capabilities as the residential AMR meter that we just looked at. But it is also capable of metering electrical demand for billing purposes. You would typically see these on a commercial building, small industrial, and basically for three-phase services as opposed to the single phase you would find on a residence. And we do not install smart meters. We have no plans to do so, but we'll just touch on them a little bit because there is a lot of interest in these meters. The difference between these meters and the AMR meters is essentially that these are capable of transmitting interval load data, so they can be used for time of use billing. There's also quite a bit of information that can go back to utility with regards to voltage levels, whether the meter actually has voltage or not, so they're quite useful in that regard. Again, they're solid state, very accurate. They can transmit time of use information and peak use at intervals as required by the utility company. They use the radio frequency to transmit the data, and they can also provide two-way communication. These meters can communicate with smart appliances and thermostats that are enabled with that technology that uses a Zigbee transmission, and that's at the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. The duration of the transmissions is 32 to 150 milliseconds, depending on how much data has to go past. And the total daily transmit time really depends on the utility company data requirements. The AMR specifications for the meters that we are using here, the signal frequency is in the 900 megahertz range, and it employs a frequency hopping technology, and that's an unlicensed spectrum as well, and that's used for things like cordless phones, baby monitors, things like that. The transmission rate, it's every 30 seconds, and the transmission duration is approximately 150 milliseconds. Transmitter power is quite low at 146 milliwatts, and they are not capable of two-way communication. The only information that's transmitted by these meters is the reading on the consumption register. There is nothing else that can be transmitted by these meters. The cost of these meters is slightly under $60 now. They've come down significantly since we first started deploying them back in 2003. And the signal strength at 20 centimeters or 8 inches is 0.029 milliwatts per square centimeter. And we'll touch more on those RF strengths later on in the presentation.
Thank you, Eric. I'd like to take a couple minutes to provide the public with a bit of history on the installation of not only the electrical meters but also our water meters. On the electrical side, we commenced installation of AMR meters in 2003. Approximately 85% of the electrical meters in the city have already been converted to AMR meters, so there's some 14,000 meters that have been converted already in the city of Penticton. And we expect that 98% of the city will be converted by the end of this year. The remaining 2%, those are meters that are very difficult to convert, so we are actually waiting until such time as there are modifications to the buildings that those meters are in, and then they'll be changed out at that time. So the 2% could take some time before we actually change them over. The AMR meter actually permits us to remotely read the electrical consumption of the meter. So we can read that by simply walking down the street with the equipment being carried by the individual that's walking down the street, or we can put it in a car and we can drive down the street and we can pick up the signal and we can actually determine what the consumption is in that particular house. So we instituted walk-by reading in 2005, and then drive-by reading was started in 2010. To date, our AMR installation costs have been about $1.4 million on the electrical side. We expect that that will go to about $1.8 million by the time we complete the program. And what it does is it reduces our read time from 22 days per month, that's currently what we spend reading electrical meters, to about 4.4 days a month. In terms of cost reduction, there's a cost reduction of $110,000 a year to $24,000 a year by making a change in technology. On the water side, we also deploy AMR water meters, and it's essentially the same technology as we use in the electrical meters. That program, we started those installations in 2004, and we have about almost 8,000 meters installed to date, and we expect 98% deployment of those meters by February of 2013, and that will be about 8,500 meters. Total program cost on the water side is about $1.8 million. But you do have to consider that we would be having to change those water meters out, and if we didn't go to an AMR meter, those costs would run anywhere from $800,000 to $1.2 million. And I'll turn it over to Tim.
Good evening. My name is Tim Wolf, and I'm from Itron down in Spokane, Washington. I appreciate you having us up here this evening. Certainly, Itron, we want to get the information out about our products and their safety. And if consumers or utility customers have concerns about that, we are here to answer questions and provide information. Before we get into the discussion, I just wanted to point out that tell you a little bit about Itron. We're a global company. We actually sell systems like these to several thousand utilities worldwide. So we have about 9,000 employees throughout the world, and so we're a well-established company that's been doing this for a long time. And one of the points I wanted to make about this technology is that it is not new. We have been shipping and building these automated meter reading systems really since the late 1980s, and its purpose is really to make the utility more efficient, prevent a meter reader from needing to access your property, make sure that the utility is able to gather accurate data for reading, and benefits such as that. So the distinction that was made between smart meters and what we call AMR, automatic meter reading, is something to keep in mind during this discussion. As I mentioned, the technology is not new. Since we started shipping technology like this back in the late 80s, it's kind of hard to believe, but Itron has shipped nearly 100 million meters and communication modules for natural gas and water meters to utilities throughout North America. 100 million, and this has been going on for 20, 25 years. So this is not brand new technology here. And the city of Penticton, like many other thousands of utilities, has seen the advantages in terms of keeping costs low for its customers and being more efficient. And that's really what the purpose of this technology is. We are going to talk about some standards that these products and these technologies conform to. And first of all, sometimes there is questions about CSA, Canada Standards Administration, which is similar to Underwriters Laboratory, or UL in the U.S., and whether those safety standards are applicable. Because these meters are considered part of the utility infrastructure and they're outside of the house, the CSA approval is really not relevant or needed for these types of products. The standards compliance in Canada really takes place with a body called Measurement Canada. And for quite a number of years, Itron has worked with Measurement Canada to ensure that our products meet their safety and regulatory standards, and we continue to do that through this day. All of the products that the city of Penticton, the meters that the city is installing, there are Centron meters, which is a residential metering product for people like me and people like you that measure monthly consumption in the house, and then there are commercial industrial metering products for businesses and other commercial enterprises that have that record more detailed and sophisticated energy usage, because some of those types of customers have different needs and are on different rates and so forth for some utilities. So these products comply with all the standards that are established, and I have one on my house in Spokane, not because I work for Itron, but because our utility there, Vista Utilities, has chosen to put this exact type of technology there, and I certainly wouldn't subject myself or my family to any sort of safety hazard. And so we will talk more about some of the specifics of the RF emissions. Mike and myself, who is also from Itron, are here to provide information and answer all your questions. And if there are concerns, we want to be very, very open and give you complete information so you can make up your own mind. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to talk about a few more of the applicable standards for safety and RF emissions and so forth.
Thanks, Tim. Again, my name is Mike Burns. I work in the product management area of Itron. I've worked with a number of different RF technologies over the years. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the regulatory bodies that have jurisdiction for ensuring the compliance of radio frequency devices in Canada. So the first, the next slide. So the first one is Industry Canada. Spectrum IC is the branch of Industry Canada that's responsible for certifying or certifying compliance with RF emissions requirements. This is the equivalent of the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC certification in the U.S. All of the AMR meters, as we've already mentioned, have met all Spectrum IC requirements and are certified for use in Canada. Spectrum IC also verifies that RF emissions from devices that require certification are in compliance with Health Canada's Safety Code 6 limits for protection of the general public, and we're going to talk about those limits here shortly. So the Health Canada Safety Code 6 limit, maximum permissible exposure limit for RF energy is listed at 0.6 milliwatts per square centimeter for signals in this 900 megahertz band. And these are classified as signals that expose the general public in an uncontrolled environment. So these tests and these limits are specifically for devices that transmit in a public area for which there's no control for the access to the device. This limit of 0.6 milliwatts per centimeter squared has built into it a 50-to-1 design ratio, design factor or safety factor above and beyond the known detrimental health effects of RF energy. So in other words, you would have to exceed that 0.6 milliwatts per centimeter squared power density value by a factor of 50 before any recognized health effects, negative health effects from RF energy would take place to a human being. The AMR meters that are installed by the City of Penticton, the Centron R300 meters, actual measured power density values, and these are on file with regulatory agencies. These are done in a controlled scenario. At a 20 centimeter or approximately 8-inch distance, 0.029 milliwatts per centimeter squared, and again that compares to a maximum permissible exposure level of a power density of 0.6 milliwatts. At 200 centimeters, 2 meters, 6.5 feet, you can see that drops off by 2 orders of magnitude, and at 305 centimeters or around 10 feet, you're less than a microwatt per square centimeter in power density. So exceptionally low levels of radiated RF energy from these AMR meters.
This next chart here, it's just a graphic representation of the relative RF strengths of various devices. To the extreme right, as you can see, that's a walkie-talkie, and they generally have a range of 0.5 to 42 milliwatts per square centimeter. Next to that, down a bit, is the cell phone held at a person's head, 0.03 to 10 milliwatts per square centimeter. After that, we have the laptop. It's getting hard to see these values now, but that's 0.015 milliwatt. We have the Wi-Fi network, which is the same value, 0.015. And after that, we have the Itron AMR meters that we've deployed here in the City of Penticton, and you can see that it's a very low value at 0.00012 milliwatts per square centimeter. And just for comparison as well, there's FM radio or TV signal. You can see it's quite low as well, and that's basically background RF that we're all subjected to. This chart here shows the relative signal strengths of various devices compared to Safety Code 6, which is a Health Canada standard for RF devices. To the right, you can see that red bar, that is at 0.6 milliwatt, and that is Health Canada standard for Safety Code 6. Next to it, again, we have the laptop computer at 0.015 and the Wi-Fi 0.015, so you can see the relative strengths there. And next to that, again, we have the Itron meter at 0.0012. That's at 10 feet, and again, you can see that's barely on the chart compared to the Safety Code 6. So what do these foregoing charts mean? Essentially, the RF signal strength of these meters is only 0.02% of the allowable standard established by Health Canada. And you have to remember that that standard has a 50 times safety factor built into it. That is at 10 feet. At 6 feet, it's approximately 0.048%. At 8 inches, it's still only 4.8% of the allowable exposure by Safety Code 6.
So I guess just to try and put some of that in perspective here, I'm not going to read every word of these excerpts from the Canada Safety Code 6, but these are credentialed bodies with academic researchers who do peer-reviewed research that is repeatable and verifiable, and they have set the standards for what is potentially harmful for RF. And I think, to summarize, it's reasonable to say that what comes out of these AMR meters is very trivial compared to that standard. It is, as these graphs have almost showed, almost imperceptible to present them visually. Now, I guess I'll be honest with you. If you're someone who believes that RF is bad regardless of the amount, even if it's a small amount, I respect that belief. I don't agree with it. But the standards bodies and the research shows that at these levels there's no demonstrated adverse health effects or linked to adverse health effects by those bodies that are charged with setting the standards, doing the research, and so forth. So again, I respect that opinion, but the data says otherwise, and the safety standards are built with a fair amount of cushion there, that relative to other sources of RF in our everyday lives, our cell phones, our Starbucks cafes, our Wi-Fi networks in our homes, things like that, it is a very small and minute amount. So I just want to make that general point in terms of the standard.
Thank you, Tim. I'll just like to close out our presentation by reading an excerpt to, and I will read the entire thing to you because it's very relevant. This comes from a report by the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority, and that report was tabled on the 20th of December of last year. And if you go to our website, we actually have the link to that in this presentation, so you could actually pull up the entire report if you want to read it. It's a 4-page report, and there's a lot of valuable information in it. But what it said is, in conclusion, the public may be opposed to the BC Hydro Smart Meter program. And I'll just stop there for a second. And really the issue with smart meters or AMR meters is RF energy. So from that perspective, they both emit RF energy. So you could take the word smart meter and replace it with the word AMR meter. So the public may be opposed to the BC Hydro Smart Meter program for a number of reasons. That these smart meters are health hazards should not be one of them. These devices are active for only an extremely short amount of time each day. They add so little to the existing background radio frequency fields that it is very difficult to separate them apart from our everyday environment. We recognize that some may disagree with our assessment. We respectfully differ. We are confident, however, that our assessment is in agreement with the overall scientific understanding regarding radio frequency electromagnetic fields. And that report was drafted by 3 separate authors. It was drafted by Dr. James Liu, the Medical Health Officer for the Vancouver Coastal Health, Dr. Patricia Daly, the Medical Health Officer, or Chief Medical Health Officer for Vancouver Coastal Health, and PRW Kendall, the Provincial Health Officer. So this is very recent work that was done. It was done and presented in late 2011. As I've indicated, the website that's listed here, if you want to go to our website, you can grab hold of that and you can go in and take a look at it yourself. So that concludes the City of Penticton's presentation, and you'll have to bear with me for a minute because I have to disconnect this cable and then take it over to Curtis and hook him up. So you'll have to just wait a second until Curtis is ready to go, and then you can hear what they have to say. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, our sincere thanks to Mitch Moroziak, Eric Livolsi, Tim Wolf, and Mike Burns, representing the City, and Itron for their presentation. It appears as though quite a few people have arrived since we began, so I'm just going to reiterate this one more time. We've got reserved seats in the front, and there's some in the third row there as well. If you are interested in asking a question of the City panel or the next presenters, at the end of their presentation, we would ask you to please come and take a seat there because we'll only be taking questions, opinions, or statements from these reserved seats. So please feel free to do that now or during the next presentation. And so we turn now to the next presenters, and we want to welcome Brian Thiessen, Curtis Bennett, and Kevin Proteur.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Proto, and I am a member and the creator of Locals Supporting Locals. And just to give a brief summary so people understand what that's about, it's a grassroots company I created because of what's taking place in our country, essentially with corporations. What we do with Locals is try to promote, support, and protect what's local in our communities, starting with our farmers and creating a connection between our local citizens, our local businesses, our local farmers. So it's about creating a network as well as getting people properly informed of current situations and issues that are taking place in our communities and in our country and even globally. Only once we're properly informed can we make informed decisions. And unfortunately with our mainstream media, a lot is not being reported in the way it should be. So I became concerned when I saw in the alternative media pertaining to the Smartmeter, AMR, wireless technologies. And so when I became concerned, I'm like, what can I do to make a difference here? What can I do to take steps to make a change here? So I looked into things, went down to City Council, I talked lengthily with some of the councillors as well as the mayor, and they were very helpful. And they've been very supportive in this forum, which is fantastic. And I learned about what a delegation was, how I can go up and present what my concerns are in our community. And so I did so. And I requested that this forum take place, so again, that we can be properly informed. So on my part, what I did is I went and researched the best people that can speak on this subject, so I'm just not talking out of my hat. So tonight, who I brought with me is Brian Thiessen. He's part of the Interior Smart Meter Awareness in Kamloops. He's got a background with finance, politics, and economics. As well, we got Curtis Bennett here. He's a Director of Operations, Interprovincial Journeyman Electrician, Technologist. Engineering technologist, lectures in medicine, provided expert witness for the Canadian Parliament Standing Committee on Health on RF EMFs. Also has been accepted into the American courts for his knowledge. He is not here because he is my friend. This is his job, his occupation. He would present in the same manner if they asked him to speak. Nothing would be different. So sometimes, most of the time, Curtis is not well liked because of what he has to tell people, because sometimes they're not going to like what he has to say, depending on what side of the fence you're sitting on. So in saying that, I'd like to present Curtis Bennett here. No, you want to go Brian first. Sorry. Brian Thiessen will be presenting first here.